Thank you so much for tuning to my show, William Wallace for America. I am truly grateful for the time that you're spending with me today. And I not only appreciate that, but I'm going to try to respect that time with some really good information and some different thoughts. You know, I'm just a regular guy. I mean, I don't, I watch my friends that are YouTubers and influencers that are on the far right, and they're making really great points about things on the right. And they sound in public like they are just embedded, galvanized, concreted in on all of those beliefs. And I'm sure they are. However, it comes across in some opinions as that's exactly who they are and only who they are. And while that may be true to a great extent, they are actually people that are ordinary people, just like all of us, that are just more passionate about their beliefs. I am just as passionate, but I try to find myself being a little bit more, I don't want to say reserved, but I try to come across a little bit more, not even in the middle or moderate, as much as somebody who just kind of looks at everything. While I'm on the right with my ideologies and my beliefs, I also see things coming from the left, and I like to find that space where I just like to kind of speak common sense. I kind of like to say, "Hey, look, I do believe in this, but I see this, and it kind of makes some sense to me," and I try to put it all out on the table and talk about it a little bit differently. So sometimes the pendulum is really going to swing on my show. You're going to go, wow, well, you sound like you're far right. No, you sound like you're going to the left. Wait, I thought you liked Trump. Now you hate Trump. You don't like your governor, and now you love your governor, and you scratch your head and you're going to kind of go, but the reality is, I'm just trying to bring up a lot of different things as a way to not only think about it and talk about it, but to kind of slap us all in the face and say, look, if we don't talk about everything, we're going to only adhere to one thing, and we're going to only think we have to adhere to one thing, and we're going to miss some other good ideas. Not that the other side, the left in this case, has good ideas, but hey, there's a lot of people that lean certain directions, but have some ideas that if we kind of talk about them, and when we do that, when we regular people, influencers, people in, that are elected officials that are more mainstream, will say, we end up taking power away from the media that divides us, the far right, the far left that divides us, large corporations that divide us up for marketing purposes. And I know I talk about this fairly regularly, if not most shows, but whenever I do, I try to think some different things that maybe I haven't said before. But most importantly, we need wake up calls constantly, because if we don't wake ourselves up constantly, we end up going back to sleep and just going, oh, yeah, my president's in office this time. It's all going to be okay. Meanwhile, the media, politicians, and corporations uses that complacency to continue taking control over our money, our land rights, our property rights, our constitutional rights. So either way, today's show is brought to you by Patriot Mobile. Please go visit Patriot Mobile to switch your cell phone service to a company that loves America as much as I do. And you do also. And also, they put their money where their mouth is. They have a lot of good beliefs in our country. And they have really good competitive rates and plans that fit any budget. And they also use all the carrier lines. Go to go to patriotmobile.com/WWFA. But I also want to talk about Bond Arms. That was next on my list, because Bond Arms actually is not only a great company to add something to your collection, but if you go to XS Sites, In addition to that, excesssites.com, you're going to get sites that will make any gun for that matter more accurate, especially at night. I always say, like when my carjacking happened, when my wife and I got carjacked, I always like to point out that what the only reason why I could have done better in the gunfight is if I had night sights, and I didn't. Either way, that's just my thoughts on that. Today's show, I want to talk about who is Antifa. Whose side are you on? Not particularly pertaining to Antifa, by the way. And does the government shutdown really affect us in today's current event segment of my podcast? So I wanted to start out with who Antifa is because I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who I value their opinion. They say some things differently than I do, but I value a lot of good points they make, which is where I always talk about, hey, we got to talk with people, even if we're not kind of agreeing with everything. It gives us some food for thought, which this did. And I went and I researched who Antifa actually is because Trump just labeled Antifa a terrorist organization. And the very well made point was, but Antifa is not an organization. And I'm thinking, yes, they are. That's what we're told. They're an organization and I know because I watch the news, the things that Antifa has done in public. And I've actually seen Antifa show up at some different events, and I know them to do things that are terrorist in nature. But are they an organization? So, what defines an organization? What defines a movement? And should we use this opportunity as a way to quiet a group of people, or do they have the First Amendment right? Let me go to this definition first before I continue going down that rabbit hole, so to speak, because I am going in a direction with this. I'm kind of throwing it all out like a shotgun blast. Remember, I'm that Second Amendment guy, so I'll use terms like that. So I looked up what Antifa is, and according to Wikipedia, I know it was or Wikipedia was uh, an organization that wanted to inform, and some people think it's gotten taken over by a left wing activist, maybe Antifa. I don't know. Well, I'm joking about that. Antifa is a left wing political movement. Antifa is a left wing anti fascist and anti racist political movement. It is sometimes described as a highly decentralized array of autonomous groups in the United States. Antifa political activism includes nonviolent methods of direct action, such as poster and flyer campaigns, mutual aid speeches, protest marches, and community organizing. Some who identify as Antifa also use tactics involving digital activism, doxing, harassment, physical violence. But wait, I thought it just said that they were a non-violent group, but now they're physical violence. That now their activism includes physical violence and property damage. Supporters of the movement aim to combat far-right extremists, including neo-Nazis and white supremacists. First off, what I find about this is Antifa likes to say they're anti-fascist, anti-Nazi. However, they use the same tactics as the groups they say they're fighting against. Their ideology is anti-fascism. Their political position is indeed left wing. And I'm going to double down. It says their methods are community organizing, digital activism, direct action, doxing, harassment, mutual aid, picketing, political violence, protest, marching. None of that sounds peaceful to me, but they're a movement, not an organization. But as it said, there are a organized movement of a bunch of different groups that all support, or I'll say that they're Antifa. It's, it's sometimes described as a highly decentralized array of autonomous groups in the United States, was how, it's put over here. So, to that point, at what point, rather, not to be redundant with the word, but at what point do we say, okay, people are going, well, Trump, made the Antifa a claim them to be a terrorist organization. Well, if they're not an organization, how can you claim them to be a terrorist organization? I get that philosophy, but if their movement contains violence, contains um, things that they do as being violent, doxing, things that are not necessarily friendly. And of course, it borderlines, I know, free speech, because if they're out there protesting and their protests become violent, that's where they lose their First Amendment right, once they become violent or use illegal methods. But what I think that Trump was doing was basically, by labeling them a terrorist organization, giving government a little bit more power to fight their criminal activities, or to fight um, their violence. It gives government a little bit more control. I get it that it's not an organization, so it's kind of hard to label them a terrorist organization when they are an a lightly organized group of multiple groups across the country. So does Trump's actions kind of say, nope, I'm lumping you all together so we can be better equipped to fight them? Or is it just kind of a crazy thing that Trump's doing, that, hey, you can't really do that with someone who's not really a group? So why is Trump going after a movement and labeling a terrorist organization? I think it's simply because it's his way of giving the government a little bit more power and authority to go after their actions. That's just me in a nutshell. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm right, but I want you to think about it a little bit differently, not as a way to give Trump a pass on labeling them an organization, but giving him credit. I'm sorry, I know some people are going to like to hear that, for taking a little bit more proactive approach to go after their illegal activities and their violence. Because remember now, way back in his first term, they were the ones responsible for burning down. Or they were some of the organizations, one of many organizations that were responsible for all the Summer of Love, all the violent protests, and all the burning down of cities, and all of the billions of dollars that could be attributed to their organization and some other ones that were causing not only violence, but destruction of public property. So, is it a stretch to label an organization instead of a movement? Maybe. But by doing that, it gives the government a little bit more control. This is just my opinion and my translation of it. There have been movements in the past without organizations, like LGBTQ movement. There was not an organization. It didn't have a centralized organization that kind of controlled it. But for the most part, while many on the right don't agree with their movement, they were pretty much peaceful. I mean, look, they stole the rainbow flag, and it's not a violent thing, although it kind of made a lot of people on the right aggravated that the LGBTQ movement stole the rainbow, which is God's promise that there'll never be another flood, and for peace. But let's face it, that movement is mostly peaceful. There's a civil rights movement which had portions of violence in it, to be able to create a movement to get certain laws in place that created more civil rights for people. But again, it's something that has kind of, I don't want to say fallen to the wayside. People still think about it, but it did its job. and it's done. And while there was some violence involved in it, it was mostly peaceful and achieved a peaceful outcome, because today we can point to things that are in our laws that the civil rights movement is responsible for when it comes to rights for many other people. You have the Black Lives Matter movement, who actually did create somewhat of an organization, which of course has gotten um, mostly dissolved, because the people that created the organization were stealing from the movement. The movement was raising money for the organization, and then they found out that the organization was squandering the money. That's a whole other thing for another day. There's the women's voting rights movement, which achieved its goal peacefully through peaceful protest, and then it went away. And I just kind of wanted to make those distinctions between a movement and an organization. And now I think the other reason Trump might be doing labeling Antifa a terrorist organization is to label them that way, to also prevent them from violent acts of violence in the future, which I really am worried about with the rise of violence that we've seen in our country. What's going to happen near the midterms? Right now, I think the leftists in this country, not people who, and let me define that for a second. The leftists aren't people who just disagree with Trump. The leftists are a far left organization that want to achieve the destruction of America, that want to usher in socialism, and those are far leftist. It's not people who just don't like Trump, because I'm making that distinction because I'm hearing people that are trying to say anybody who doesn't agree with Trump is a leftist. And the middle of this country, which I think is the largest percentage of this country, are people who just want the right environment for everybody. I'm going to stop myself there because I don't want to get off track. Leftists in this country are not people who dislike Trump. Of course, leftists don't like Trump, but I'm referring to the far left in this country that wants to destroy things like capitalism. And this is not a big percentage of our country. This is a small percentage, much like the far right is a small percentage. But the far left is using a lot of people with single issues that cause them to vote Democrat. The far leftists want to destroy America and the foundation of this country, which provides equality for everyone, which provides opportunity for everyone. They want to destroy the foundation that brings everyone together for the benefit of the masses, not the benefit of single organizations that will use the masses for their own benefit. So I think that Trump sees this and sees that Antifa could be used to cause disruption leading into the midterms. So, what makes a movement a bad thing that we should go after, and how? Well, I think when it crosses the line of violence, as Antifa has done in many times. Does that mean that Trump should or should not label it a terrorist organization? Well, I, I think sometimes in this case, it might be the right thing to do, whether it's an organization or not, simply as a way to prevent them in the future from organizing better. This action, I believe, also prevents them from organizing better. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm right. It's just my thoughts, like I've been saying, from just a regular, ordinary guy who speaks his mind like I do, me, because I don't claim to know everything. I just claim to know that I'm very passionate about our country. I'm passionate about good, wholesome values that make our country great for everybody, that empower families, empower businesses and small businesses in a way where people can prosper and live happily. So, what labeling this a terrorist organization, I think, does is it means that we can't ignore it. It means that we kinda highlights that we have to kinda watch it. And I get it that this gives a little bit more momentum to push back on Antifa, but at the same time, they're gonna push back on the right. So that's why this also is an action by Trump that we have to be more aware of, whether we like it or not, as a way to watch out to push back on things that Antifa might do in the future. Does this mean by how I'm saying this that I'm anti-Trump? Because, does it mean that, oh, you're turning on Trump when you're actually trying to decipher what he's doing? It's not it at all. I just want everybody to think a little bit more about it instead of it's not as black and white as some people says. Well, it's not an organization, so Trump's an idiot. Or what the far right might be saying is, hoorah, he went after them as an organization. Because I still support the general movement of a set of ideologies or beliefs that the movement around Trump and the people around Trump believe in. But I can say that without having to agree with everything that Trump does or says. I can say that I support the general movement of things that of the people that believe in Trump, of the movement around him. I can believe in all the core principles, make America great again, of making our country strong again without agreeing with everything that Trump does or without agreeing with everything that Trump is. Because most of the people were wanting a movement that made America great again. Most of the people around Trump were looking for something. There was a void where a politician put America first. There was a void where people felt like they were not being included in the political process. And Trump was able to fill that void. I speak to a lot of people that are following Trump, consider themselves MAGA. Of course I do, because I mean, I'm part of a group of people that want to make America great again. I get a lot of opinions. And there's a lot of people in the movement that do not agree with everything that Trump is doing, do not agree with everything, how he's doing everything. And there's a lot of people in the movement that don't agree with everything that Trump is saying. It doesn't mean that they're anti Trump, or it doesn't mean that they're lapdogs either. It just simply means that we want a to be a part of a group of people that are moving America in a direction that is going to create opportunity for everybody and be able to protect our constitutional rights, not only for ourselves, but for future generations. And I understand that there are people who simply do not like Trump and are going to be adverse to everything he says and does. But it doesn't mean that when they look into the crowd, that the people that are supporting the MAGA movement or even supporting Trump, it doesn't mean that, what are they, stupid? How can they do that? It just means that we cannot adhere to the policies of the far left that are being supported by many people who consider themselves Democrats and anti-Trumpers. There's a lot of people that, maybe they're not thinking that they are supporting an agenda that is really working against America. They don't realize it because the media and the left and many Democrats have made Trump such a villain. And look, don't get me wrong here. Trump does not do himself some favors. He does himself an injustice sometimes, because sometimes he says things the wrong way. Sometimes he goes about things the wrong way. And the media and people that don't like him will magnify and focus on that and make it a lot bigger. In their minds, they're not making it too big. I get it. Trump's not always going to do the right thing. But does that mean that the movement is going in the wrong direction? No. Does it mean that we have a leader who's going to turn into Hitler later? No. Because when Hitler got away with using things against people and using the media and politics against the people in general, there were not things in place that would stop him. By the way, guys, don't forget about the wellness company. Go to twc.health and use the promo code WWFA. I'm switching my banners on the video site, by the way, to do that. So does it mean that Trump is, because people who don't like what he's doing are always also saying, well, Trump is acting like Hitler. Again, I am going to point to the pendulum. I'm going to point out things that I don't think Trump is doing right or saying right. But I'm also going to say that I like the Make America Great Again movement. It doesn't mean that I'm jumping in bed with the Trump movement. It doesn't mean that I'm sitting on Trump's lap. It just means that I support a movement that is going to make America great, that is going to protect our Constitution. And I also believe that you can do more good being a part of a peaceful movement. Because let's face it, when you look at the Make America Great Again movement in general, it is 99.9% peaceful. Point out one thing to me that's not peaceful about it. I get it. There's some people who point to things that Trump is doing. Oh, that's not. If it's not lawful, they're shutting him down. The courts are obviously watching him. The courts have shut him down over many things that he is able to do. If he was doing more illegal things, they would shut him down over everything. Doesn't mean that I'm justifying the things that you might consider stupid. It just means that we, the people, are staying part of a movement and trying to call out. And many of us, like I said, are calling out the things that we don't agree with as a way to point out, hey, we're in here and we expect this to go in the direction that we joined it to be going in. So I get it that there's a lot of pushback on what he's doing. I understand it because, like I said earlier, he's not always saying things the right way. He's not always doing the right thing. That mean that his movement is bad or that he is going to be the next Hitler. And I say that to my friends who don't like him and people that are on the left. No, that's not at all what it means. I'm going to say it again. Just because he does things a little bit differently than people think he should, maybe does things that are bad in other people's opinions, does it mean that the movement and the people around him are going in the wrong direction? No. It means that if he was doing something, we now have things in place in our country that would stop him. Look, they're stopping him for frivolous things, let alone if he was doing something very illegal or very bad. And I'm making it simple. I know I get it. I'm saying it in a real simple way, but I'm doing that for the purpose of time. It's simply put, it's up to the people in a party or an organization or a movement to do the right thing. And if the movement overall is doing the right thing legally, leave it alone. If it's doing the wrong thing, change it. It's why when I look at the policies of the left or the Democrat Party that's using policies that are more leftist or more like a socialist, it's why I speak out against that movement. And I could look at people in that organization or that movement and say, are you crazy to be wanting, health care for illegal aliens, or that you want, everybody to get government assistance? It's no different. It's no different at all. And I was sounding more passionate about it. And again, for some people, oh, that pendulum swung way far right for William on this one. It's not that I'm defending it, it's that I'm pointing it out because in today's world, the media and the narratives have divided us up so much and have caused us to hate people. Look, I've got, friends on the right that hate the Clintons and hate the Bidens and hate Obama. And then, people think, well, how could you like Trump and this? And then how could you like Biden? I get it. We can call each other out all day long by the policies of the people that happen to lead our movement. But I'm talking about it from a perspective that it's up to us to change it from within, to make sure that our movement does the right thing overall. And if ever it got to a really bad point, that we in here would stop it. And I have confidence in the people in the MAGA movement would do that, because right now it's working overall for the good of the people and not the bad. Um, I'm pausing for a second only because I want to get back on to some other things, that I have to talk about. You know, the according to the Trump, it's a movement. And the people before Trump, there was people that were tired of the Republican Party and the quote conservative movement being headed up by either rhinos or establishment politicians or people that would always stab us in the back and promise different things, and then they get in office and they become politicians or they become, more political. And I get it. Our country has kind of lasted the way it has because our elected officials get into office and they don't go to too far of extremes like many presidents. And people get mad about that. They go, wait a minute, we elected this guy as a conservative Republican and he didn't go right enough. He didn't go far right enough. Well, no, he pulled to the center. Everybody says, oh, well, that Democrat pulled to the center. It's kind of what has kind of kept our country to some extent together. However, there are a lot of policies in the last several presidencies that have steered our country more to the left, namely immigration, namely healthcare. And there's a lot of things that are not sustainable for our country. And Americans have gotten tired of the empty promises. And the Trump movement, Trump came in and offered somebody who's never been in office and a Make America Great movement that people really felt like they could get behind. The and there's so many Americans that needed that. They're fed up. And that's where the power comes from, that people were just fed up. And the Trump MAGA movement was able to fill that. I didn't intend for this podcast to be a pro-Trump, pro-MAGA movement, because I've pointed out several times that he does not always say the right things, and he doesn't always do things in the right way, which causes him a lot of problems, not only in the media, but with people in general. And I will say this, how much more could he get done in better ways if he was more political? Maybe there is a way for Trump to be more political, to get things done with more support, albeit a little slower, but maybe in a way where people would not turn against him as much. One thing that the Trump MAGA movement has made clear to me is that people will adhere to bad policies because they don't like someone on the other side. Namely, a lot of Democrats won't like any of Trump's policies because they don't like Trump. The same as they will reject good ideas or even a good movement because they don't like the person leading it. You don't have to like everything about someone or even like the movement to be with it. Let me say that a little differently. You don't have to like everything about someone or the movement they're leading to be with the movement in general if it's doing the things that you want done. And if it's a bad movement, you can be a part of it to try to change. If a good movement has bad aspects of it, you can be a part of it and try to change it from within it if it's doing good things overall. There's a lot of movements that were started to do the right thing and went in the wrong direction because because it got hijacked by the wrong people. The same that the people in a good movement can keep it from getting hijacked. Take the MAGA movement. If people continue to steer it in that make America great direction, pro constitutional policies, pro rights, pro freedom, then it can continue to be a good movement. And for those of you who don't like Trump, you can say, well, we hope that the people in the movement reject the bad ideas so that way it doesn't go in the wrong direction. Or even and sometimes you don't need people within it to change it. You just have to let the law of the land take care of it. Because if in our country, there's a lot of things in place that will stop Trump if he's going to do something illegal, the laws of the land, or let the natural laws take care and render its decline, much like that whole trans movement. It kind of became a thing and was moving forward, and it's kind of starting to fizzle out a little bit. The laws of nature, no pun intended, have kind of taken care of that movement in general. If the people in that find that something's going to happen bad, the laws of nature, your gut feeling kind of kicks in. But it is up to us to point out the things that we don't like or agree with, or even to try to change it within so that the things that we want out of it happen and the things we don't want out of it happen. Do I agree? Again, I'm doubling, tripling down with everything he's doing. No. Do I agree with every appointment? No. Do I agree with the general movement? Yes. What's the foundational principles of making our country strong again, debt free? Do I like some of his financial policies? I agree with the general movement and direction. I don't agree with the fast pace, we'll say. Our country didn't get to where it is financially overnight, so it can't be reversed overnight. What can we do? Well, we can do the same things, but a lot slower over a time. We can't shrink government overnight. I like one of the policy of making the employees, everybody resign and get paid, but we'll talk about that one in a minute. I'll talk about that program in just a minute. So, is up to us to point out the bad things And just because we like the overall movement doesn't mean that we have to bow to the leader. It means that, hey, they're there because they started the movement, but it's up to us to find a new one for our movement if they continue to do the wrong thing or do worse things. Like I said, I'm just a God fearing, Bible thumping, gun loving, flag waving, American history posting patriot. But the news media and narratives tell everybody else that when I post things like that I'm serving a person they hate, because the movement, the great Make America Great movement, is being led by someone that some people don't like. And just because everybody in that movement is God fearing, Bible thumping, gun loving, flag waving, well, that makes that person, or anybody who does that, somebody that we don't like because that's like Trump. They The media narratives have helped people associate that everybody who waves the flag in the movement is also the person that they hate in that movement. And as a result, you get labeled somebody who is that person, so to speak, that they don't like. On to my next short topic. Governor Landry asked Trump to deploy the National Guard. Is it theater or was it needed? Here's my opinion. Louisiana, while we have a couple of high crime cities, do we need the National Guard, or is it just political theater? Personally, I think there's a little bit more theater involved in this. What our cities and American cities that have high crime rates need is better policies that create more opportunities for everybody, because that is the best way to fight crime. The problem is politicians didn't do their jobs, and now they need crime fighting policy or crime fighting tools to clean up the mess that generations of bad elected officials have done. The news media narratives are what guides them to create some of these bad policies, and that's why I keep telling you it's up to us to change it. The government shutdown. Democrats are willing to shut down the government over spending all of a sudden, even though they voted for spending in the last spending bill. But it's really over spending money on funding health care and benefits for illegals. So they didn't like spending when it's a Republican thing, but they like it when it's their thing. And is it really 10 million illegal aliens, or is it 40 million? The problem is when it comes to health care, America, forget, no, not America, politicians have used health care to tug at the heartstrings of the average American. And while in our healthcare system, there's millions of Americans that need whatever there is in place right now in the healthcare system, politicians have thrown the illegals into the mix. So now you can't separate the illegal alien healthcare spending from the American citizen healthcare spending. So to cut it out for illegals means to hurt some Americans. It was done intentionally. But Democrats are willing to shut down the government over that spending. The Democrats are doing this intentionally before the midterms. As we get closer to the midterms, all of our elected officials are going to do crazier and crazier things. The narratives are going to get crazier, but only as it pertains to shifting the votes. Watch the narratives, watch the media. The shutdown affects our thinking by corralling us up, dividing us, and turning us against each other. And that's what we have to be aware of. The fact that either side can run government without ideologies, that they can't run government without, I said that wrong. The fact that either side can't run government without ideologies should tell us that they don't care about running government or doing what's right when it comes to spending. They care about galvanizing their ideologies and re-election. This doesn't mean I'm turning against the Republican Party or the MAGA movement. It simply means we can't be a part without being blind and allowing ourselves to be pushed with the crowd and get corralled into the pen on our own side, waving our flags. Back to what I was saying earlier about Trump. We can be a part of the MAGA movement and agree with the things that are in the MAGA movement that sounds like we're supporting the leader, and do it without supporting the actual leader of it. It doesn't mean I'm anti-Trump. It doesn't mean I'm anti-MAGA. It just means that movement in general is where I find my ideologies and belief system supporting policies that secure the future of America and freedom. And while there's parts of what Trump is doing that seem like it's not doing that to others, I think some of that are these same narratives that we're watching in that are going towards midterms, turning us against somebody and successfully turning those people against the whole movement. What I have attempted to do in this podcast is separate the movement from the person who is leading the movement right now, that is Trump. Not as a way to turn against Trump, but as a way to show everybody, look, if we're in this movement, we have to change and guard it from within. And if you're against the movement because you're looking at the leader of it as being evil, so everything in the movement must be evil, I'm saying to you in a very long-winded way, and I'm circling back here, that look at the segments of the movement and not the leader in the movement. And look at the people in the movement, people like me that are trying to safeguard, because that's what I am doing as just an ordinary guy in the movement. I am saying, look, we don't have to like everything that Trump is doing. We don't have to like everything that he's saying. We have to safeguard the movement like other movements in the past that have done good over time, civil rights, women's voting issues, that have done good for people. Again, I don't agree with the LGBTQ movement. It's done some good for the people in their movement. I don't have to like it to say oh, because I don't like it, I'm shutting it down. I don't like a lot of things that it stands for, but I'm not trying to shut it down because that's their movement. But I can say, you know what? Maybe it's made awareness for some families. I don't have to agree with people's choices or how they live their lives to say maybe that movement has helped people get along with their families better. I don't know. I just thought of that off the cuff. But to make the point, don't hate the movement because of the leader of the movement. Don't think that everything that the movement does is bad because the leader does some things that may appear to be bad, may actually be bad. But if they're really illegal, the government's going to shut them down. Call them out. The laws of nature are going to shut it down over time if that's what happens, that they are doing the wrong thing. But back to the government shutdown. The fact that we are in an ideological narrative warfare now that's distracting us from how our elected officials are not able to run government fiscally, financially properly shows us that we are being manipulated in the system while we fuss about how Trump says something or does something instead of watching what all of them are doing. You see, the pendulum is swinging back. I don't agree with everything that all the Republicans have done over this time because the Republicans have kicked the can down the road over time just as bad as Democrats have injected things that have hurt us socially, financially, with government programs, whatever the case may be. I remember when Democrats used to be against illegal immigration, and that included the Clintons and Schumer and Biden, all the things that they did that were against illegal immigration, and now they're for it. Now they want to spend it to be able to take care of illegal aliens in our country. So I can point to the things on the left just like people can point to the things on the right. I am trying to motivate more people to look at both sides, all the sides, and say, I'm going to promote things on the right and I'm going to promote the MAGA movement and the things within it. Doesn't mean that I'm promoting all the things that Trump, that leads the movement, does. It simply means that I'm not going to be in support of the hypocrisy that I get from the left or the hypocrisy that I get from people on the right. It's up to us. We're to blame. I see the beauty of the opinion on both sides as a way to find a path to enlighten people down the middle, not to give up your ideologies and come together in the middle and kumbaya and be moderate. Don't be passionate about your beliefs. But if we can talk about it in a way where I can say I support most of what Trump is doing and most of the policies that are in the MAGA movement, and doesn't mean that I'm a lapdog. It just means that I can step away a half a step or just enough to be able to separate myself and not and separate myself and still be able to point out the things that the left is doing. Let me know if I'm bringing you down a path that you just think is wrong. I'm just believe that we are convinced. If we are convinced that we're on the right side, does not mean that we have to wave the flag and just speak out against the other side, because that's what's happening. People are convinced that, oh, if you're on the right waving a flag and posting pro-American memes, you are really totally in agreement with everything that they do, and it's not. It just means that most of what I believe in is over here on the right in that MAGA movement and not with policies that are move the country, I believe, in the wrong direction. Both sides have played politics with our votes and our money. It doesn't mean that I'm turning against Trump. Doesn't mean that I'm saying that I'm repeating that for intentionally, because every time I say that I like most of what the MAGA movement is, I get people that don't listen to the good ideas. They will not, if they don't like Trump, the minute you say something that is pro policy that Trump is moving in the direction of, you get shut down. It's happening across our country. And as a result, those policies get stopped. Maybe it's good on some of them. Maybe it's bad on other ones. But overall, our country is moving to the right. It's not going towards leftist ideologies Some of those ideas are finally fizzing out. They're they are submitting to the laws of nature. We just have to be aware of the bigger picture. That's my point. And while I pull up my final topic that I want to talk about today, and my final thought of this show is actually from a news article that I pulled up. And I'm going to pull up here again. Actually, before I talk about my final part, I want to let you know they're still talking about hurricanes that are nowhere near us. They're out in the middle of the ocean. They're not going to cause us any damage, but they're still controlling us, by the way, through the media with the narratives, not the narratives, with the story of the no. Now there are some sort of dancing storms. There are rare. It's a rare hurricane dance, and they drag you into this. Watching this, it's just one example of the trillions of examples of how the media controls us, our thoughts, by the news stories that we don't even realize that we're being dragged into it. Speaking of which, I got a news story here. So this one is a U.S. government shutdown begins as partisan division rules Washington, as it always has. I'll read and give you my synopsis. The story is by David Morgan, Bo Erickson, Nolan D. McCaskill, and Richard Cowan. And it reads the U.S. government shut down much of its operations on Wednesday, as it should, as deep partisan divisions prevented Congress, because they don't know how to run government fiscally, financially, and the White House from reaching a funding deal, setting off what could be a long, grueling standoff for what could lead to the loss of thousands of federal jobs. A great thing. Of course, I'm adding to this a great thing because let's face it, we need to shrink government. And the problem is when the Democrats and Republicans get together, everybody's got their own little golden goose that they don't want to get rid of because it, keeps them in office ultimately and keeps power to the organizations that keep them in office. And the narratives make us feel bad about losing government jobs. Well, the reality is we need to shrink government, and it just needs to happen. There was no clear path out of the impasse while agencies warned that the 15th government shutdown, oh, boo hoo hoo, that's me, since 1981 would halt the release of a closely watched September employment report, slow air travel, suspend scientific research, withhold pay from U.S. troops, and lead to the furlough of 750,000 federal workers at a daily cost of $400 million, which, by the way, they get paid when the government gets back up. And air travel shouldn't be a government thing. It should actually privatize it. Suspended scientific research, another thing that should be private. You see, these are all those little things that politicians have gotten government linked to. Republican President Donald Trump, whose campaign to radically reshape the federal government is already on track to push out some 300,000 workers by December, warned congressional Democrats a shutdown could clear the path for more job cuts. Again, the biggest problem with government is that it continues to grow. And if we don't do something to reverse that trend, we're not only going to see more debt, more unfunded liabilities, we're going to see hundreds of $trillions of debt. The article is written to be like it's a bad thing that we're shutting down government. It's a good thing because it shows us just how much government we could do without. I get it. There's a lot of government we should have. The problem is politicians on both sides that do not know how to run things fiscally have controlled our government through ideologies and narratives, muddied up the waters, bureaucracy grows, we suffer. Vice President JD, back to the article, Vice President JD Vance issued an unusual warning about air safety. Nothing that air traffic controllers and Transportation Safety Administration personnel, noting that essential staff who work through shutdowns would be worried about delayed paychecks. If you're flying today, I hope, of course, you arrive safely and on time, but you may not arrive on time because the TSA and the air traffic controllers are not getting paid today, Vance said on Fox News. You see, that tells me right there, you see, here's the pendulum. Hang on. I mean, come on. Does the vice president have to say that? I mean, right there, it's fear mongering. Oh gosh, the Democrats now it's the Democrats are shutting it down, which they are, by the way, because they went spending on illegals. But now it's their fault that you're going to get delayed. Not to mention that it's gotten kicked down the road. Can's gotten kicked down the road to this point that we are where we are because generations of politicians before didn't want to do the right thing or be fiscally responsible. And we are where we are. And now the finger pointing. Article. The U.S.'s longest government shutdown, which stretched over 35 days in 2018 to 2019 during Trump's first term, ended in part after flight delays caused by air traffic controllers calling in sick. Senate Democrats on Tuesday blocked a stopgap measurement to fund the government through the November 21st over Republicans' refusal. Now it's Republicans' fault, you see, to attach an extension of health benefits by millions of Americans that are due to expire at the end of the year. Republicans say the issue must be addressed separately. You see, the article is making it sound like the Republicans are stopping health benefits for millions of quote Americans. And yes, as I pointed out earlier, they've muddied up the waters with the healthcare system that illegals are getting a part of, as well as Americans that legitimately qualify for the program are a part of. It's all part of the same system. But now this article is not separating illegal from American. It's just saying from millions of Americans because they're lumping illegals into that group of Americans. Both sides were posturing to blame the other side and looking for advantage in the 2026 midterm elections that will determine control of Congress. You see, it all comes down to who gets control of Congress as to where all this is as to why all this is happening. Senate Republican John Thune scheduled another series of votes on Wednesday, hoping to pressure Democrats to break rank. The shutdown was set to delay the release of some government economic reports, adding to unease to Wall Street investors. Wall Street opened lower, gold higher. At issue on government funding front is 1.7 trillion for agency operations, which amounts to roughly 1/4 of the government's total $7 trillion budget. Much of the remainder goes to health and retirement programs, unfunded liabilities, by the way, and interest payments on the growing $37.5 trillion debt, which is going to be added to with the unfunded liabilities in the retirement programs, which they're slightly referring to. Independent analysis warned the shutdown could last longer than the budget-related closures of the past. Donald Trump and Republicans have shut down the government because they don't want to provide health care to working class Americans. Again, they're not separating Americans who deserve it from illegal aliens who happen to be in America. What's changed is President Trump is in the White House. That's all there's about it. This is politics. Trump's Republicans hold majorities in both chambers of Congress, but legislative rules require 60 of the 100 senators. Democrats are focused on health care. The article goes on. The only other thing that I would like to point out later is that, You're going to see, or in this, on last thing I'll point out, by the way, in this podcast is that you're going to see an article flying around that says hundreds of thousands of bureaucrats are resigning from government. And they're making that story sound like it's a protest. It's not. These are people that were offered a chance to resign from their positions and get 6 months of pay if they wanted to resign, and they could get 6-month vacation with pay. Don't be fooled by that article at all whatsoever. Read it as it is. Those people chose to, because quite honestly, they could probably get better jobs than they have at the government, and they got 6 months of pay. Good thing they did that. Either way, I would like for you, please, to understand that out of this podcast, what I really wanted you to get out of this is not a support or lack of support for any party or President Trump or the MAGA movement, as much as I want you to walk away from it that the narratives and ideologies have us convinced to think a certain way, hate people, hate the policies that they stand for in such a way that we get lumped into groups, we get crowded into pens, pun intended, you know, animal pens, if you will, to be mocked and ridiculed, just like the leaders of that movement are getting mocked and ridiculed. We are not adherent to leaders on either side of the political aisle. We are adherent to policies that make sense for America. I'm against policies that don't make sense. I'm gonna talk about it in a way where, yes, I do want a movement that protects American values, protects our Constitution, protects families, protects opportunities for everybody, freedom and liberties for everybody. And if that makes it appears that I adhere to one person, so be it. But I'm telling you this as I did today in a way that I want people to realize that just because we believe in certain policies, certain beliefs that are part of a certain movement, and we like a certain person, does not mean that we cannot don't have the ability to separate ourselves from the things that we don't like about somebody or a movement. As I've pointed out, those are the times that we have to listen to the other side, find the things that we can agree on as a way to bring more people together to take away power from the politicians that we don't agree with or the things that we don't agree with that they are doing. I'll end this on this thought. Please share this podcast with somebody you think might be interested. Also, go check out the Wellness Company as a way to protect your medical freedoms and use the promo code WWFA, which supports them, supports my show. Check out the other sponsors that I have as a way to support my show and the freedom movement. Thank you so much for tuning in to me. And I would always appreciate your feedback at bill@williamwallace.net. Check it out. Check out my website. And also, I'll be doing another show here really soon, so get ready.